The studio was buzzing with tension before the cameras even went live. Trump had walked in with his usual bravado, adjusting his suit as if the world still revolved around his every move. But the energy in the room felt different this time, more skeptical, more restless. The crowd wasn't there to be dazzled, they were waiting to see if he would stumble again. And sitting across from him, arms folded and eyes sharp, was Denzel Washington, a man known not for political theater, but for cutting straight through it. Trump launched into his monologue quickly, his voice louder than necessary, tossing exaggerated claims about strength, success, and power. But his words felt hollow, bouncing off the walls instead of piercing the room. Every promise sounded like a recycled line, every boast more desperate than the last. Denzel leaned back slightly, his silence becoming a presence of its own. He didn't need to interrupt, his calm stare alone made the audience lean forward. The shift came fast. Trump fumbled a statistic, contradicted himself, then snapped at the moderator for correcting him. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The former president, once feared for his bluster, now looked like a man battling his own script. And still, Denzel hadn't spoken. His silence was louder than Trump's shouting. Then, at the peak of Trump's rambling defense, the camera cut to Denzel. His face carried no smirk, no dramatic flair, just quiet disappointment. The audience gasped. In that single moment, without a word, he'd framed Trump not as a leader losing an argument, but as a performer losing his mask. The opening blow hadn't been spoken, it had been seen. And it set the stage for what was about to explode. The silence couldn't last forever. Trump, sensing the weight of eyes shifting from him to Denzel, slammed his hand on the desk and snapped, "Say something. You just sit there acting like you're better than everyone else." His voice cracked, a sharp break in the polished armor he had always worn in front of a crowd. Denzel leaned forward at last, his tone low but steady, like a surgeon with a scalpel rather than a brawler with fists. "Better," he said, pausing just long enough to freeze the room. "No. Just honest. And what I see here tonight isn't strength. It's collapse." The audience erupted, some gasping, others cheering. Trump tried to cut in, shouting over the noise, "Collapse? I built this country stronger than anyone." But the volume only betrayed his panic. His words tangled into contradictions, jobs, walls, tariffs, an avalanche of old slogans that no longer landed. Denzel raised a hand, not with the arrogance of a politician, but with the calm authority of a man who'd had enough. "You didn't build anything. You branded it. You sold America like a cheap product, and now you expect applause because the label still shines while everything inside is rotting." The crowd fell into stunned silence before bursting into applause so loud it drowned out Trump's attempts to shout back. Cameras zoomed in on his face, flushed and unsettled, as he jabbed a finger at Denzel. "That's a lie," he barked. But even his denial sounded small against the weight of Denzel's words. It wasn't just a debate anymore, it was a dismantling. And Trump's empire of soundbites, once unshakable, was starting to crumble piece by piece under the quiet precision of Denzel's truth. Trump, sensing the corner closing in, switched tactics. He clenched his fist, turned toward the audience, and barked, "This man is a fraud. He wants to take my place because I fought for you. Nobody defended America the way I did." The chant he expected to rise from the crowd never quite landed. Faces showed unease rather than unity, the energy in the room shifting like sand slipping through fingers. Denzel leaned forward, calm but razor-sharp, his eyes cutting straight through the performance. "There it is," he said, voice steady but loaded with fire. "The same act, the same victim card, the same circus trick. You scream patriotism, but what you sell is fear. And you know why they're quiet? Because they've heard this broken record too many times." The audience buzzed, a mix of gasps and nervous laughter. Trump tried to wave him off, but Denzel didn't give him a second to recover. "You say you fought for America? Show us the fight. Was it in bankrupt casinos? Failed universities? Or maybe when you called our veterans losers? Tell the people right now what you've built that wasn't built on lies, debt, and betrayal. The room went electric. Even those who came to cheer for Trump now looked toward him, waiting for a clear answer. But his mouth opened and closed without substance, his usual catchphrases suddenly hollow. For the first time that night, the former president's armor cracked. And Denzel, sensing the shift, leaned back in his chair, giving the crowd a moment to absorb the silence. It was louder than any applause. Trump finally snapped. He slammed his hand on the podium, his voice rising into a shout that echoed off the studio walls. You don't know what it takes to be president. You're an actor, just an actor. You read lines. I lived the fight. His words were meant to sting, but they sounded more like desperation than dominance. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some shook their heads, others whispered to each other. The tension was thick, the kind that makes even the strongest supporters wonder if they've backed the wrong man. Denzel didn't flinch. He sat tall, eyes locked on Trump, and then with chilling calm he answered, "You're right about one thing, I am an actor. But here's the difference, I don't pretend off stage. You've been acting your whole life. You pretend to be a billionaire. You pretend to care about workers. You even pretend to be a patriot. Every role you've ever played was just another scam." The crowd erupted. Gasps, cheers, and nervous laughter spilled into the air. A woman in the front row shouted, "Tell him, Denzel," and the camera zoomed in on Trump's face, flushed and trembling with rage. "You call me fake?" Trump barked, pointing a finger. "I built an empire." But Denzel was already ready with the kill shot. He leaned forward, voice steady as stone, "You didn't build an empire. You built a con game. And the worst part? You conned America into thinking you cared." The silence that followed was deafening. Trump opened his mouth to fire back, but the weight of Denzel's words pinned him in place. The audience could feel it, Trump's grip was slipping. Trump tried to steady himself, but the cracks were obvious. His breathing grew heavier as he clutched the podium, leaning into the microphone like a man on the edge of collapse. "You don't understand business. You don't understand winning. People begged me to run because they knew only I could fix this country." His words tumbled out, scattered, the rhythm broken. Denzel didn't wait. He let the silence hang just long enough, then pierced it with a voice that cut like steel, "Fix this country? You couldn't even pay your contractors. You left working men and women bankrupt while you strutted around calling yourself a success. America doesn't need a hustler in chief, it needs a leader with a spine." The audience roared. Even those who had been silent up until now began to clap, some rising to their feet. The cameras caught it all, the split screen of Trump's scowl against Denzel's unshaken composure. Trump barked back, his voice cracking, "That's a lie. Pure lies. Everyone here knows I'm the reason America was great again. Nobody has done more than me." He jabbed his finger toward Denzel, but the gesture looked less powerful than panicked. Denzel stood now, slowly, deliberately. The studio went quiet as his presence filled the space. He leaned slightly forward, his eyes locked on Trump. "The only thing you made great was the illusion of yourself. You've bankrupted casinos, airlines, universities, now you're bankrupting America's soul. And unlike your companies, we can't just file for Chapter 11 and walk away. We have to live with the damage you leave behind." Gasps rippled through the audience. Trump's mouth opened, but no words came. The camera zoomed closer, catching the beads of sweat on his forehead. For the first time, he looked like a man cornered, unable to sell his way out. Trump slammed his hand on the podium, the microphone squealing with feedback. "Don't lecture me, Denzel. You're an actor, just an actor. You read lines written by someone else. You don't know anything about sacrifice, about the deals I've made, about the power it takes to sit in the Oval Office." His words were spit out like bullets, desperate to reassert control. But the insult only gave Denzel more fuel. He tilted his head slightly, a calm smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "An actor," he repeated, the tone dripping with quiet contempt. "You're right, I am. And even I wouldn't dare play the role of a president the way you did, because it was a disgrace to the script of history." The studio erupted. Laughter, applause, even a few gasps. Trump's face turned red, his jaw clenching. He tried to shout over the noise, "You don't respect America. You don't respect the people who voted for me." Denzel leaned forward, his voice steady, booming over the chaos. "Respect? Respect is earned. And you earned none. Not from the workers you stiffed, not from the soldiers you mocked, not from the allies you betrayed. Respect doesn't come from bullying, or cheating, or tweeting at 3 in the morning. Respect comes from service, and you wouldn't know service if it stared you in the face." The words hung heavy, slicing through the air. Even the moderator froze, unsure whether to intervene. Trump opened his mouth again, but the weight of the moment had shifted, the crowd was with Denzel now. Cameras zoomed in as the audience leaned forward, waiting for Trump to answer, but the silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Trump finally snapped, slamming both fists on the table so hard the glasses rattled. His voice cracked with rage. "You think you're some kind of savior, Denzel? You think these people actually care what you say? They voted for me because I built something real. I made America strong again, and you," he jabbed a finger toward Denzel, his face twisted in fury, "you're just a Hollywood mouthpiece who got lucky." The studio went dead silent, the air charged like a storm about to break. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back slowly, eyes locked on Trump, the calm before a verbal strike. Then he leaned forward, his words cutting like glass. "Lucky?" Denzel's voice was low but carried through every corner of the room. "No, Mr. Trump. Luck didn't get me here. Truth did. Integrity did. And the very thing you've never had, respect, did." He paused just long enough for the weight of the words to sink in. "You talk about building something real? You built towers on debt. You built wealth on lies. And you built a presidency on fear. That's not strength, it's fraud dressed in a flag." Gasps erupted. Half the crowd clapped, others booed, but the moment had already slipped away from Trump. His lips moved, searching for a retort, but the cameras had already captured his face, pale, shaken, furious. Denzel didn't stop. He leaned in one last time. "And let me tell you something, when America looks back at this chapter, it won't remember your tweets, or your rallies, or your tantrums. It will remember the damage. And it will remember the people who stood up to say, 'Enough.'" The words landed like a hammer. The studio exploded, cheers, whistles, applause, and for the first time that night, Trump sat speechless, Trump sat frozen, his hands gripping the edge of the desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His face flushed red, his eyes darting to the cameras, searching for control, but it was gone. The studio audience could smell it. They just witnessed the unthinkable, the man who built his entire persona on dominance, reduced to silence. Denzel rose slowly from his chair. He didn't shout, he didn't wave his arms. He let the weight of the moment do the work. Standing tall, voice calm yet unyielding, he delivered the final strike. "You see, Donald," he said, his tone sharp as steel, "a leader gives strength to the people. A fraud takes strength from them. You've spent your life draining others, contractors, workers, even this country, so you could pretend to be bigger than you are. But here's the truth, without the lies, without the branding, without the bluster, you're small. And history has no place for small men hiding behind big towers." The crowd erupted, half the audience on their feet, clapping, shouting, cheering with a fever that drowned out everything else. Trump tried to speak, raising his hand, his mouth opening and closing, but the words wouldn't come. Every attempt was swallowed by the roar of the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on Denzel, his eyes locked forward, unblinking. The moderators didn't even try to intervene. This wasn't their stage anymore, it belonged to him. And then he sealed it: America doesn't need another brand, another circus, another cheap con. America needs truth. And tonight, the truth stood up. The sound was deafening. The studio shook as if the walls themselves couldn't contain the energy. Trump slumped back, staring blankly, a man completely unmasked. Denzel turned away from him, facing the crowd, and in that moment he wasn't just an actor. He was the voice of a nation tired of being sold a lie. The debate was over. Trump's face was drenched in sweat, his usual bravado slipping as the cameras zoomed in tighter. He was supposed to be the one in control, the showman, the master of spin. But tonight, the stage belonged entirely to Denzel. Every time Trump tried to deflect, blaming the media, attacking his rivals, or tossing out half-baked slogans, Denzel cut through the noise with a calm, commanding voice that silenced the room. "You keep selling the same circus tricks," Denzel said, eyes narrowing, "but America's not laughing anymore. This isn't entertainment. This is a collapse." The audience shifted, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Trump lashed out, "You don't know what it takes to lead." His voice cracked under the strain, sounding more desperate than powerful. Denzel leaned forward, his tone measured, steady, almost surgical. "Leadership isn't about screaming louder. It's about carrying the responsibility of a nation with dignity, not tearing it down for applause." The studio erupted, not with laughter this time, but with thunderous claps that rattled the set. Trump's expression froze, caught between rage and panic. For the first time in years, he looked cornered, as though the walls were closing in. The headlines were already writing themselves. America had just witnessed the unraveling of a man who had once thrived on spectacle. The tension in the studio reached its breaking point. Trump, flushed and trembling, jabbed a finger toward Denzel, his voice cracking as he shouted, "You think you're better than me? You think you can lecture me on what America needs?" The word sounded less like strength and more like a plea, an echo of a man unraveling. Denzel didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on Trump with the quiet intensity of someone who had already won. Then he delivered the line that would replay across every network, every feed, every screen in America: "I don't think I'm better than you, I just know this country deserves better than you." The crowd exploded, half gasping, half cheering, the sound washing over the studio like a wave. Trump tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. His mouth moved, but silence filled the air. For the first time, the man who built his persona on dominance had been stripped bare on live television. The producers struggled to cut to commercial, but it was too late. The moment was already viral. Clips raced across social media, hashtags trended instantly, hashtag collapse on air, hashtag Denzel truth, hashtag end of the act. As the cameras faded to black, Denzel stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, and offered a nod to the audience, a gesture of calm after the storm. He didn't need to gloat. The truth had landed, and its weight was undeniable. Trump slumped back in his chair, staring blankly ahead, as though the fight had been drained from him. The episode would go down in history, not just as another political spat, but as the night America saw a mask shatter. America saw more than a debate tonight. It saw truth rip through the noise. Trump came here thinking he could bend reality, but instead, he broke under it. Denzel didn't just speak, he exposed. And whether you cheered or gasped, you felt it. This wasn't performance, it was a reckoning. The mask is gone, and the question remains: how much longer can America pretend?